Time Flier. Can the organic mind drift through time? I hadn't spoken about this for some time, because I gave my word. Sometimes a man's word is his curse. I was asked not to tell this story until a number of events unfolded for the world's audience. It is better for many to witness the beginning, than to simply have the one to tell the story. There are things, strange things a person learns in life that could make him question his mental state. So it is best to discover and validate your truths before you tell the world. I know this story to be true as to the best of my knowledge, that is unless the Texas heat fried my brain like an egg that summer so long ago. This is my statement, a statement hammered into the pillars of time. Let's begin. Shortly after Hurricane Katrina and a bad marriage that left a very bitter taste in my mouth, I won a state land auction from Texas. In my mind, this was an exit plan from the smiles and frowns from people that thought marriage had made me happy. It didn't. I was 1 mile away from a stop sign. The property was a former airport. The airstrip consisted of an old hangar, what was left of a tower. At some point a pilot must have flown right into the side of it. Beside it was a small caretaker's house, that had fell into disrepair. This place offered peace for my mind which I was in dire need of. At that time, I found a friend in the Texas sand. Nothing was around but an old AT&T tower and a communications bunker still owned by Bell South. Little echoes of the Cold War are still around us. Down the burnt-out highway was a closed diner, that had become a wreck of the building it used to be. It still had the haunting charm of 1969, the year it was left to be covered by the Texas dust. Along the top where the faded-out sign that read Butcher's Diner in a dull pink color, in its day it was a bright shade of red, buzzards had nested watching for a snake to cross the road. For much of that year, my only human contact were ghosts of the past. Sometimes I would sit in the rusted-out Volkswagen Beetle someone had left behind just as the hell winds had died down and the fine yellow dust no longer filled the wasteland. I would dream, a dream of what this place used to be. I could see and feel the pilots flying in and coming to the diner, talking about the night skies as they chomped down on Royal Crown Cola and greasy hamburgers grilled up by a man that was known as the Butcher. On numerous occasions, I would peek through the boarded-up windows of the diner. In a way, the diner had become my theater for ideas and inspirations. A link to a world I would never get to know, happier times for people of the past. The floor of the diner was a 1950s black and white checker pattern stained with the devil dust of Texas. Along the walls red stools still had a crimson leather shine to them, the booths still had cups and dishes from someone's last meal. Along the wall behind the counter white coffee cups still hung on rusty nails, each had filled with that nasty yellow dust. Along the other walls pictures still hung from what I assumed were pilots that had become friends with the owners. Between two doors which had to have been the restrooms sit an old jukebox, its broken glass hung as if they were ice cycles frozen in time. I wonder what had been its last song? In a way, this place had been erased from time and maps. Most of the local towns didn't even know this place was out here. In a way, I relished the look I got when someone asked me where I was staying, and I said the old airport out beside the diner. It's the look you get from someone, the look of missing something for most of their lives. For the time I was there I can't recall ever seeing a car, other than mine. The place was dead and off the grid as far as one could get in Texas. I don't think rattlesnakes come out this far. One thing was for sure, the buzzards lived out here. They watched you every move almost human-like. After a while, I started to name them in an attempt to humanize them because they were just there. They never found the last owner of the airstrip, he just went missing and left everything. I half wondered whenever he decided to take that last walk, did the birds become his friend in a bad way? Sometime after 1969 and when the airport closed down, the government required the new owners to keep a beacon active on the tallest building on the site, at the time that was the tower until a plane clipped it. Then it was moved to the top of the caretaker's house. This was done in the rare case a plane would need to make an emergency landing using the beacon to find the airstrip. It's better than landing a space shuttle on the highway, which almost happened a few years ago. Whoever was on the stick overshot their landing. Around 1970 they dropped a dedicated power line and installed backup generators so the light would blink forever, and in doing so this supplied power to the caretaker's house. Free power from the government? Well, somewhat. When I signed the quitclaim deed, the fine print stated that if I went over a current amount I would be held responsible for payment. For the time I was there I never had to pay a bill. I guess the government or NASA didn't really care as long as the airport that no one knew about acted as a lighthouse in the Texas desert. On dark nights, for miles, you could see that thing blinking away. The way I looked at it, free power and a huge nightlight in a very unforgiving place. If I could have talked someone into making supply and food drops like they did in Vietnam, I would have still been out there, friends with the buzzards. After a month of being on my own, I stopped looking for people and at times wondered if I would become a raving lunatic that had become king to a group of buzzards with human names. TV didn't offer much in the form of entertainment. The few stations were fuzzy and gave me headaches. The radio would fade in and out with classical music and the rare midnight rerun of an Art Bell show. This in itself was surreal, especially when he talked about one of the neighboring states and government conspiracies. I found when someone talks about lights in the desert sky, your legs find a way to walk past the dunes of man and look to the skies in hopes of seeing something, not of Earth. I never saw a UFO in Texas, just so we're clear. Due to my lack of entertainment and pending boredom, I started to look closer at my surroundings. The last owner was a bit of a shut-in. I spent many nights burning piles of old newspapers as I finished reading each. In many ways I watched the world change from one time to another, one newspaper at a time. Right on the edge of the runway, I would burn the newspapers and flight receipts from now dead pilots. At times it reminded me of an altar or funeral pyre to the dead. This was a perfect spot. From here as the fires burned I could see two mountain peaks come together. This reminded me so much as a saddle. Early in the morning just before sunrise, the sun would nest in this saddle like a phoenix egg ready to hatch. At night as the moon came up I wondered if this was what a giant nest would look like if dragons still wandered the wastes. Sometimes on a dark night, you could see a tiny light. A Texas summer thunderstorm is a haunting magical incarnation of everything that is good and evil. Across the dead Texas land the ground comes alive, at times sparks would jump across the ground. If it had been hot and dry, there was a chance one would see ball lighten. Large balls of power come alive and follows you around. It can move and decide for itself. After weeks of studying them I cannot say they are not alive, because they are. I would go as far as to say, they are the eyes of the future and have been sent here to watch the world. On a night like this is when I met him. Storms and lights echoed over the old airport. Thunderous claps and vicious downpours made me question the health of the roof. Moments later it became quiet and I heard the engine of a plane. A Cessna Skymaster. At first I thought maybe it had been struck by lightning. Most Skymasters I have ever seen wear white. This one was a shade darker than black with a white tail number 1919. The Cessna buzzed over my head as I looked up through the rain. It turned and made its descent to land, pulling right up beside me as it throttled back and cut its power, rolling to a stop. The door creaked open as the rain stopped and out popped a man about 40. Dressed in old flight leathers and high black leather boots. Walking up to me with his hand out he spoke in a Scottish accent. "Hi, I'm Victor. I guess we need to have a chat. Have you started to name the buzzards yet? It's been a long flight from there to here, mind if I trouble you for a cup of tea?"